Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Twins Russell and Ronald Conboy battled demons, one following a tour in Vietnam, the other after guarding nuclear weapons in Europe. Their story is one of duty to country, only to be sidelined in the aftermath. They wrote a book before they died, and now Ron's son Russell and his mom Valerie have carried out their wishes and published their story. It's entitled Breached.
So there were two twins growing up in Chicago, right? They're always very connected. They grew up in Chicago, rough side of town, south side. Grew up, fighting, running for their lives, pretty poor, but they had each other kind of thing, right? Russell, his twin, went off to Vietnam, so he wrote about his experiences in Vietnam as a heavy machine gunner. My dad went to Germany, Bitburg, Germany, and he went there to guard nukes, because you couldn't have two brothers go to war at the same time in Vietnam, because the likelihood of them dying.
Well, he has his part that he wrote, and his brother at the same time. They didn't sort of plan this together, but his brother wrote his own version of what he experienced.
It's kind of like different experience, the juxtaposition of the military battle kind of thing, and then more of the psychological battles that my dad was dealing with. They weren't really raised to take orders so well, and not do their own thing. So that definitely they ended up coming down on my dad a lot. He was a rebel, right? He stood up for certain things and, for what he believed in, even if it was against some of what the military might, they're very strict. And then Russell's in Vietnam in the trenches with a machine gun, life or death every other day, right? He was the guy who'd go out and scout things too, all right, go out in the jungle. He was quiet like a ninja, right? So they'd be like, hey, you go out in the jungle, go out there and count how many people we're going to fight tomorrow. Yeah, so sitting out there, in the jungle, and then monkeys throwing rocks at them when they're out there trying to scout people too, right? Or whatever. Yeah, so it's a really cool story. Then they get back to Chicago, and then just kind of life getting to Chicago at the time. And that's kind of like when the hippie stuff was starting, right? The hippie stuff was starting up. So people were really anti-war, anti-military, and you're expected to come back from your military duty overseas and for people to be like, yeah, thanks for helping out the country, man. And it was just the total opposite, right?
After both my husband and his twin brother left the military, and they each, pursued, different forms of education. My brother-in-law was studying to be a Jesuit, and my husband, he went into the counseling field. And at some point, they both decided they would write a book, not independently of each other. And what happened was my brother-in-law, he more or less finished his version. My husband felt compelled to write something about the people that he and his brother grew up with. And some of them were the ones that died, in Vietnam. And he just wanted to tell them, the kind of human beings that they were. When people started coming home in body bags, this wasn't something they were anticipating. It's not something you think is going to happen to you, right? Or to your friends. And the reality is that it does happen to you, and it does happen to your friends. And they die, and it was a shock for them, as it is in any war, when you lose your buddies that you grew up with.
Most of the stuff in this book is true, right? Most of it is their life experience. In my opinion, when I was trying to help him with editing and stuff, the best writing that he did was the writing that was of his own experience. Same with Russell, right? Because I knew both of their stories so well that I knew what was in the writing was true and what wasn't. So there's a really cool twist at the very end of the book. There's something that happens that kind of comes out of nowhere, and that really happened to their best friend. So the way the whole situation goes down at the end of it is all completely true. Honestly, I think it would make for a good movie. Just the way that it goes, you'll see when you read it. In my opinion, it just sucks that he wanted to make it into like something fictional because he was worried about things with his friend at the end of the book and like any consequence that would come with that. But I mean, I do get it in a way. I mean, you'll see at the end of the book. I mean, it's a good teaser to get people to read through the whole book, I guess.
So was your dad sick?
Yeah, pancreatic cancer.
I'm sorry.
So he basically put that last time into this, right?
How about your uncle?
He died it was 10, 15 years ago.
So your dad just wanted to get this done.
Yes. It was just, his final he felt his final kind of mission in his life. And he'd been counseling for numerous years, and he'd been in AA. He made it to 40 years, and he was a mentor for a lot of people, and he helped a lot of people. As a matter of fact, he had one young fellow that he worked with in Kamloops call him up about 7 years ago, found his name and number, and he was living in Saskatchewan at the time, but he tracked him down, and he said, I just wanted to thank you, for helping me back when I was a teenager. And he had several people along his path that looked him up. Another one, a truck driver that was suicidal, and he was driving by Stockton. He lived in Canada, but he said, I'd like to meet you and thank you in person. So they met at a truck stop outside of Stockton. Because he tracked him down. He found out where he'd moved to and where he was working. And yeah, he wanted to thank him. And there was several people along the way where, they said, you saved my life. And you know what? He's got a friend who he reconnected with, someone that my brother-in-law had gone to the Jesuits with, and he's been living in Japan for the last 20 odd years. Anyway, he talked to my husband for probably a year and a half while he was ill. And he got stories out of him about his life because this gentleman was so surprised at seeing Ronald all these years later that he had quit drinking. He had a family, a successful career, because when he'd seen him, he was just off the rails drinking and thought this guy was just heading for a big crash. And, he almost did, but he pulled himself together. Anyway, this gentleman wants to do a screenplay about his life.
Never know.
So who knows what's going to happen down the road? My husband's hope was that, some people would pick up and read it and say that they had experienced something similar to that. And they're glad that somebody wrote about it.
Well, you've both done a great thing here. This is a real tribute to your husband, your father, and his brother. And you got the job done for them. And somewhere they're smiling. Thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you. Sure thing.
Thank you.
One of the most interesting things about this podcast is how people get to the point where they're so inspired, they feel compelled to get a story published. And that was the case with M. Salam, who wrote The Power of A, Anna Melia edition. So this is your pen name, right?
That's my pen name, correct.
Okay.
I am a mother of two, so I chose to have a pen name instead, just in case I get the fame that I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
I would still have a mom life. And since this book was inspired by my daughter, so I decided to have a pen name, and that is Sulam. Means mother in Arabic, and Sulam are the 3 sequential letters found in my kids' names.
That is really cool. Now, are you a teacher?
I used to be. I taught BPK, so I was still assistant teacher. I did go through the process of filling out my tests in order to teach elementary school, but then I felt very scared and intimidated by the extra security and responsibility I have towards kids that are not mine. So I decided to take a step back, and maybe in the future, maybe when my kids grow up, when I no longer have that, connection with how big a responsibility is to have little kids.
That is so disturbing to me.
It wasn't like this in the past. It was, you go to school, the teachers have complete freedom, what to say, how to teach, how to move. Now we're very limited. And what you do for 8 hours is not enough for how much these teachers get paid.
I know. Well, that's,
yes.
You don't teach to get rich. You teach because you have a calling. Seriously,
Exactly.
Right? The good news is this has led us to The Power of the A Letter Animalia edition. Is that how you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean?
So Animalia, in other words, is the animal kingdom. And it's the scientific word for animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. It's how when you do the study of animals, they call it the Animalia kingdom.
Well, geez, I feel stupid already. Okay.
Oh no, I learned it while I was deciding what edition should this be. So no, don't you be.
What was your inspiration?
I've always had a connection with writing ever since I learned how to write. I'd always write, but it was more personal about my day. It was a diary. I mean, who does not do that? Most people do, but it just made me feel so good. Now, when I became a mother, I would read books to my daughter, and sometimes I would decide that I would tell her a story from the heart. And every night she kept saying, "Mom, can you please today say a story from the heart?" I made up so much stories. I should have written them down after every night, but I did not. And then on one of those nights, she was holding a alphabet book. And in that alphabet book, there was a focal point, a letter J, but surrounding it, there were little letters like M, N, O, P, etc. And I asked her, "Mama, what's this letter?" She said, M. I'm like, I was about to correct her. I'm like, "No, Mama, that's not." But she's like, I know it's J, but there's an M here, there's an N here, and there's an O here. So why can't J be M or O be N? You know? And I'm like, that's a very interesting question. And after I said goodnight, the idea hit me, and I decided to write an alliteration book where every short story is just focused on that letter. So it takes the reader into a letter by letter adventure. So basically, for letter A, for every beginning of the word, it's going to start with that same letter. Okay?
Right.
Yes. I'll give you, I actually wrote a little short story for this interview.
Okay.
And an inspiration to the book. It begins with interviewing inspiration.
Okay.
Input intellect. Inspire individuals and interesting information.
Okay.
So the meaning behind what I just said, that's a short story that you might find in one of the books, but of course they're going to be animal subjected, is that interviewing inspiration. You, Alice, are interviewing the inspiration behind the power of a letter.
Okay.
I, Muslim, I'm inputting intellect and inspiring individuals and these interesting information.
So give me an example in the book.
Okay. Choose a letter. Which one would you like me to read?
Let's do A. Since the name of your book is The Power of A Letter.
Okay, let's do A. An alligator ate an apple. As any appetite agrees, an apple adds antioxidants anatomically automatically. An ant agreed. Alas, alas. That's
great. How do kids respond?
My kids liked it very much. It's very interesting to see how their tongue has to be twisted while they're reading the same letter over and over again because of how it keeps going up and down and they change. Some words are actually challenging for them. For instance, antioxidants automatically, especially my kid, she's second grader. So she's just getting into the 70, 100-page book,
Right.
It's still getting into big words, which is what is pretty cool about this book is that if the kids don't understand a certain letter, there's a glossary in the back where they can go and they can search for the word and then read all about it. And there are facts about different animals.
What's great too is it's probably great for diction in pronouncing, learning to pronounce these words. Right. Yeah. Clearly. There's an opportunity there for that. What a creative idea. Are you now you were involved in the school system, your kids are in the school system. Does this enable you to maybe bring the book to a classroom to read?
Yes. The public system does give opportunities for mothers to come once a year and present whatever it is they do. And that is pretty cool. On that day, unfortunately, I did not have the chance, but I did send my book to my kids' public school, and hopefully they're right now revising it, and soon it will be part of the library system.
Ah, that's
So,
great. That is
yes,
great.
wishing for that. I do have to take a step and start looking for what it is I have to do the book signings and maybe visit schools, because 100% schools are my main target. I do want this new language to be taught to kids. I think it's very challenging, very fun, and maybe they can create their own with just certain letters. So hopefully I'll start very soon.
And you're going to keep writing, I assume.
Yes, I am. There's actually a second edition coming very soon, and that is Humankind edition. Their stories are, of course, a little more complex, but they're pretty cool.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. You have a great day.
Thank you so much.
I'm so busy. We're all busy, right? It's the best excuse not to do something. Well, Pamela Goings is a medical researcher. Talk about busy. But somehow managed to publish Adventures of Sky and Ducky, The Big Woods. Tell us how you got this done, Pamela.
If you saw my calendar, you would wonder. Actually wrote or made the story up when my grandson was little. So he had the little ducky. You can see it in the picture. And he liked me to tell him stories at night before he went to bed.
How long ago was this?
Well, he's 17.
Oh.
Probably 15 years ago, 15, 16. And he had his duck till he was about 7 or 8, and he lost it somewhere, which was devastating. But I would make the stories up and tell them to him and repeat them over and over. So for Christmas, when he turned 15, I had created that book on Shutterfly. And I printed it that way and gave it to him for Christmas. Oh. And he was so excited, and it just really hit me. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should just do it. So I published it on myself on Amazon, which is really hard if you don't know what you're doing. So then I wanted somebody to do it professionally so it looked nice. And so I had Fulton Books do it. But just very exciting to see it right there, and it's all together. And I've got the second one written and illustrated, and the third one's in the works. I just
look at you.
They all take place in the yard, in the backyard. That's where he was allowed to play when he was little. So there's a little patch of woods at the back of my yard, and it's maybe 10 trees at the most. But he called that the big woods, going in the big woods. So he would go in there and play. And so that's where our adventure starts. He was there playing. And of course, I have ad-libbed it to make it huge. And he's lost in the woods with his little ducky. And he's keeping him safe and warm, trying to be brave. And they're, trying to find their way home. They get very muddy. They think they hear a bear. Throughout the story, it's always Ducky that needs assistance or is worried or concerned. And then Skylar is the hero, of course, who keeps him protected and gets him home. But they have their own conversation going. And Ducky, of course, is a real character who's alive and talks and interacts with Skylar.
What do they talk about?
Wanting to go home, what they miss about eating for dinner, their fun times. They're just two little boys stuck in the woods, thinking that they're never going to get home. So just being afraid and what they would like to do when they get home, all the special things that they're missing.
Aww.
And then, of course, mommy is yelling for them, and they come out of the woods and they're fine. And they tell, or Skylar tells her, how he protected Ducky and kept him safe. And of course, she's calling him a hero and he's wonderful. So they are covered in mud, and so they have to get their baths and get ready for their what my grandson always called his cozy place. So he would watch a show and he had to have all of his stuffed animals and his pillows and popcorn and juice. And that was his cozy place when he was little.
Sweet.
And that's where he took his nap. So you would turn on the show and he would get all in his cozy spot, have his little snack, and take his nap. So all of the adventure, it sounds like it's, morning to night in the book. It takes place between breakfast and lunch.
Right.
It's just his little playtime.
Right.
But Ducky is getting his bath in the washer, and it shows that, Skylar wants to know what that's like because Ducky's bath looks more fun than his. But he waits for him, and then they take their nap and they're ready for their next adventure.
And so you will provide that next adventure in the next, at least how many more books?
3 is what I have planned right now. I don't know. There's 5 or 6 stories that I used to tell him, but I don't remember all of them the same. I have to recreate the other ones.
You know what I think is really nice is that your grandson grew up to be a teenager, and we all know how teenagers can be. And he still appreciated those stories at 15. He still appreciated those stories that you told him. I think that's really sweet.
Yes, he really responded so well, and I was so excited for him. But they were very personal stories for him and me, and we had a lot of fun with them.
Yeah. Do you have time to read these stories for children?
Right now, I don't. I really want to do that.
Maybe your grandson. That would be a great community service.
Oh, it would. I'm going to have to talk to him about that. That might be something wonderful for him to do, actually. And I think he would do it. He's very charismatic, and he loves younger children. So I think he might do it.
Yeah.
But I will talk to him. Right now, it's not, for me, it's not it's not feasible to put one more thing in.
Yeah.
I do have a Facebook page. I'm not on there very much, but I have it.
Right.
I have an Instagram. I have a LinkedIn.
Do you talk about your book on any of those platforms?
It is on LinkedIn. I think I've attached it to all of them at one point, and I need to do it again. I was just waiting for all of this to, get put together so I could just release it all at one time on there.
Right.
And have a new, hey, it's here, it's bigger, it's better. So
yeah. How did it feel when that book came in the mail?
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. I love hardback books, and just to see it in a hardback and have it, I was just so excited. I don't have any of them left. I've given them all away. So, but that's okay.
All right. Well, maybe I'll talk to you when you publish your next one.
Wonderful. I'd love that.
All right. Listen, you have a great day. Don't work so hard.
I will. Thank you.
Richard Arroyo was forced to leave a job he loved as an executive chef in Houston, but soon found it was the motivation behind his book, Chef Richard, Sugar-Free and Gluten-Free Cookies and Desserts. Richard, what happened?
I lost my leg during COVID, so they told me that being in the kitchen might be too dangerous.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, well, that's what led me to write the book.
How did you lose your leg?
Well, I was on my lawnmower one day and I was cutting, and then when I came in, I saw a little red spot on my leg, and I'm like, oh, what's that? I thought it was like a spider bite or something. So I went to the emergency room, and of course, I sat there for 14 hours before they saw me. And, well, I don't know what it was. It just progressed and it got worse. And next thing I know, they were telling me, oh, you're going to lose your leg. I'm like, what? They said it turned into an infection, but they couldn't tell me exactly what caused it, or, was it an ant bite or was it a spider bite? They couldn't tell me. They they're still looking into it right now.
Oh my goodness. But you loved it so much you wrote a book.
Well, I wrote a book because I had a lot of recipes from my past because my mom was a type 1 diabetic and she loved sweets. And back then in 1978, the sweets just weren't there. The sugar-free sweets weren't there. So I started writing stuff and creating recipes, and she loved them. My first one was a sugar-free pumpkin pie because it was close to Thanksgiving, and she loved pumpkin pie. So I said, you know what, I can make a sugar-free pumpkin pie. I wasn't into gluten-free yet then, but I was definitely into sugar-free. So using the products that were available for me at that time, I created a sugar-free pumpkin pie that she could enjoy. So that's how I got started.
What do you use instead of sugar?
Well, back then, there was only a couple of things that were out. There was like NutraSweet, but today, we have so many of them. We have Estiva, and we also have a new product that just came out called Allulose. And Allulose is similar to Estiva. They're both plant-based products. They're produced from plants. But Allulose, it resembles sugar, tastes like sugar, and reacts like sugar. It's a little expensive right now because it just came out in the market, but a lot of the recipes that I produced in my book are made with Estiva extract.
How about that? And you like the flavor?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because it doesn't leave an aftertaste.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say they can taste it, but other people say, it tastes normal to me, so that was the goal that I was going for.
So what are some other desserts with no sugar?
Carrot cakes, a variety of cookies, chocolate chip cookies, oatmeal cookies, sugar cookies, Christmas cookies. I do a lot of different types of pies. I do cheesecakes, sugar-free cheesecakes. So there's quite a bit of desserts in the book, in the first book. And I am working on a second book, which has a lot more international type sugar-free desserts,
like
cannolis and scones and English desserts, bread puddings and things like that are sugar-free, that are from England. So different types like things. A few things from Germany, Mexico, a lot of the sweetbreads. So I'm converting a lot of those into sugar-free. And the second book is also gluten-free. The first book is also gluten-free. I had to go in and recreate all my recipes to accommodate the gluten-free product. And the reason I decided to go gluten-free is because I had opened up a small company that dealt with children with autism, and they found that gluten-free products worked great for them. It helped them, progress in their growth. So I just started doing more and more gluten-free products. And so I said, you know what? A lot of people with diabetes, can benefit from gluten-free, sugar-free products.
That's great. So how are you telling people about this, Richard?
I'm on like Facebook and Twitter and all these other things right now. Plus, I'm getting ready to start doing some podcasts through YouTube, developing a recipe on Facebook once a week to show what's in the book and talking about it a little bit.
That's a great idea. So we can watch you put the ingredients out, put them together, and see what it looks like when you're done, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And the way I keep telling people, the way I wrote this book is that a 10-year-old could prepare these recipes. If they can read, they can produce these recipes. I made them so simple because a lot of these recipes, I was a chef for 30 years. A lot of these recipes that I would look at in the book just to see what they were so difficult. And people were going like, oh my God, it's like 1 step, 2, 3, 10 steps before I finish. I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
Right.
I said, so I wrote this book to where if you can follow it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, the recipe will come out perfect every time.
Oh, that's the book for me.
Yeah. So, I I worked for a company that I developed menus and recipes for, and it was a steakhouse. It was a big steakhouse, and I was one of the executive chefs. And the CEO would always ask me. He said, "Chef, can you write us some new recipes and for a new menu items?" I said, "Absolutely." And I would write them, and I would produce them, and I would present them to him, and he'd say, "Always keep this in mind." He said, "Keep it simple, stupid."
Yes, KISS.
And he said, "That way anybody can produce your recipes." And from that day on, everything I wrote, I kept that in mind.
Well, good for you. Do you have any plans to move beyond desserts?
Yeah, I'm going into some diabetic type entrees, appetizers, things like that. I used to produce a lot of entrees for my mom because she, like I said, she was a type 1 diabetic. So
Right.
I had to make sure that they were like low in fat, low carbs. And pasta is a big dangerous item for diabetics because of the starch that creates so much sugar. Mm-hmm. So you have to kind of stay away from starch items. But there are a lot of items that that you can produce that they can eat and will keep their sugar at a reasonable level.
That's great. You're doing a great service, Chef. You really are.
Well, I'm also a type 2 diabetic. So, not only do I produce my items, I also test them myself, and I also have about 5 to 8 people that I know that are diabetics, and I also use them as I hate to say it, my guinea pigs, but they love it because they get free desserts,
Good for them. All right. Well, keep up the good work, Chef Richard Arroyo, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Well, sounds great. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Lori Crabb got a little help from her furry friend. That's what inspired her to write a series of books, this one entitled Finding My Forever Mom Through the Eyes of Betsy.
Well, Alice, that really got interesting. I thought about years ago writing a children's book about going to a dog camp or a kennel and how people feel kind of uneasy when they have to take their pets and they're going to be gone and they have to take their pets to a kennel or that kind of a thing. So I started writing it, and then I put it in a drawer, and a friend of mine said, "Why don't you just get it out and write it?" Well, you know what? I got fortunate enough to get a little Maltese. I've always had Maltese dogs. And I got a Maltese, and she was just this little itty bitty thing. And she actually wrote the book and wrote my first book. And then she helped write my Forever Mom book. So it came very, very easy for me.
Your Maltese.
Yeah, it's a breed of dog. And they're little white little treasures. And she came into my life. I have known a woman forever, and that's where I have gotten my Malteses throughout the years. And she called me, and her name was Barb. And she called me, and she said, "I have a little girl that you need to have." And I said, "Okay," but she said, "You can't have her right away because she had a baby that she should never have had, and the baby died."
Oh.
And so this is my Forever Mom book. It's about Betsy, is her name, coming and finding me and finding her forever mom. And it's for children really that, people that are in a bad transition. Maybe they're foster children. They are still looking for their forever family. And so one day I get a phone call from Barb, and she just said, "I've got this little girl and she needs to be with you." So I said, "Okay." And Barb took care of her during this little bad time that, Betsy had. And so when she actually lost her baby and that kind of a thing, Betsy knew that when she had this little baby that there was something wrong. So she didn't pay that much attention. And then the baby that she had ended up dying anyway. So then Barb kept her for a little while. And then she called and she said, she's ready to come and be with you. And so, interestingly enough, I have access to a plane. This Barb, she was in Oklahoma. So we flew down and picked her up, flew her back home, put her in my car. It was a hot summer day. And then I have a couple other Malteses at home. So when she got home, she knew that she was with her forever home.
How did you know?
She gelled so well. I mean, she kind of runs the place, but she's so active. And you just knew that she felt so comfortable that she was where she needed to be. And we just have treasured that, the whole time. And everybody, our little other puppy dogs at the home love her. And she kind of rules the roost, actually.
I find that really interesting because most times when you bring a dog into a situation where, they were your dogs for however long, and now you're bringing this new dog in, for them to be so accepting.
I don't know. We're so connected. The little puppy dogs are so connected, and they are so loved that they kind of look at her for a while. Yeah, probably. But Betsy just took off. I mean, she just said, I'm here, and this is the way it's going to be, and we're all going to get along. But I feel so bad because, Betsy found her forever mom. And so the ultimate goal of the book is never, ever give up. And I think there are so many times that, children just feel neglected. They feel like, well, I'm never going to find, my family or these kinds of things. And Betsy did. Betsy found it. So don't ever give up.
Any thoughts on getting the book out from where you are?
I do. I've got some venues, this library, bookstores. Mm-hmm. And I've always said, I can read them. The Animal Rescue League, I can read, because they have children's times that I can read. And then I've gone to the different veterinarians and kennel clubs and Maltese associations, those kinds of things.
Oh, that's great. Are they receptive to you?
They are receptive.
Where are you located?
I'm in Des Moines, Iowa.
So you're willing to travel to these various kennel clubs?
Yeah.
They have story time for children with the pets.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Betsy will come with me. So they can actually see Betsy, and because she's got another book coming out that's Snacking the Betsy Way.
Snacking the Betsy Way?
Yeah, and it's at the publisher now. But Betsy is just so busy. She has no time to just eat.
Oh, okay.
So she snacks.
Does she have favorite snacks?
No, we just do the regular dog food, but she'll take them in her mouth and dump them out, and then she's just busy. She's just busy.
Great. Well, Lori, thank you so much.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
After a career at Boeing, D.D. Darwin has returned to what he loves most. You guessed it, writing. The name of his book, Life's Little Mysteries. So how long ago did you actually start writing?
Actually, I started when I was about 20, 25. First time was my grandmother said, help me out here on the family genealogy. And I started there helping her. And then it just went from there.
What made you decide to go and publish a book?
Well, two things happened. One, my wife has been after me for years to do that. And when she passed on last year, I was like, well, why not? And the other thing was I got a challenge from one of my good friends at the American Legion post I belong to. He said, can you write that book? And I said, oh, I don't know. And I have a whole bunch of everything is short stories. And that's what I like.
So it's a collection of short stories. Are they short stories that you wrote over the years?
Yes.
How do you come up with your ideas? Are you inspired by people? I mean, do you have dreams and wake up and write about them?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, very simple. As a rule, about 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, an idea will cross my mind. I wake up, I make a note, And then when I get up next day, I start writing, and that's it.
So give me an example of what we'll find in the book.
Well, in the book, there's a story about an old man and his son looking for treasure. And there's a murder mystery, and there's different types of scenarios in this book. There's one about a king who gets attacked, and there's a one by, well, like I say, there's all types of stories. In fact, one of the stories that I love the fact that a man who has traveled the world comes back home, visits his dad, and they are out in the desert. And his dad has been looking for this particular series of treasures for years. And it's the son thinks the old man's nuts. But they go out and they look for it. And they go across this desert and they have all types of adventures. And they get caught in windstorms, and the whole thing boils down. One day they find what they're looking for, but at the same time, the old man's dog, his favorite dog, and only dog actually, gets snake bit, and now he has to make a decision. Does he leave the dog and take the treasure, or does he take the dog and leave the treasure?
Oh.
So bottom line is, he takes the dog. The son unknowingly, or knowingly, I should say, takes a little of the treasure, but off they go. And now the race against time to get the dog to a vet. So that's that type of adventure.
Well, animal lovers are going to love that story.
I would think so.
Are there any stories based on any real life experiences that you've had?
Well, all of my stories got some experience in it, be that people, places, or things. I have been traveling all over the world and doing different things. All of my stories have some flavor of things that I have been involved in. Each of the stories I try and, if I can, I try and relate a picture in my mind to the story.
And you draw it yourself?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So not only do you write the books, you illustrate them.
Most of it. Sometimes I don't come up with an idea, but I use clip art, and then mix and match. But mostly it's my art.
That's great.
The main thing was I had to write a bunch of those stories, all these stories, because I was raising my two daughters alone for about 15 years, and yet I still had to travel. That was my job. And so I would write these stories and give them to the girls. And so there was kind of a reason that kept me out of the bars at night. But main thing is I just wrote these stories so I could share experiences and different things with my girls.
Did they appreciate you and your experiences?
More now than then.
Yeah. What, is there a bird chirping behind you?
Yes.
Is that your bird?
No, it's on the patio outside of my little office I have.
It's a loud bird.
There's a bunch of them.
Did you write a story about that bird?
Not yet, but I'm thinking.
Maybe next time.
I have one daughter who would love to see that bird go someplace else.
Are you doing anything locally to let people know that you've written a book?
Just the guys at the Post and, not much, but some, yeah. Mostly at the American Legion I belong to, and then got some friends I go to. And of course, my kids are all excited and they tell their friends. And
you going to do a book signing at the American Legion?
Well, we'll see what happens. right now I'm in the throes of finishing. I want to write a book for each of the girls. And then I got one now published. I got almost finished with number two, and number three is outlined. So I got those stories all written. And then I have a fourth book, which will probably never get published, but it's a Cracker Barrel philosophy type thing for my grandkids.
Oh my goodness, you're really on a roll now.
Oh, I've been doing this for years.
Well, good. That's good. That's good to hear. How many daughters do you have?
I have two daughters.
Okay. How did it feel to get that book in the mail?
I'm very pleased. The key thing was watching the smiles on my daughters' faces. They were real excited.
That's awesome. Well, Dee Dee, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Obviously, it's my honor, and thank you very much for the time it took to get a hold of me.
No problem. Naoki Ishimoto is a young woman from California who's written her first teen romance. It's entitled Your Heart is My Enemy. You haven't been writing long, right?
I started writing 1 or 2 years ago. I just wanted to try it, and apparently it was a good fit. The reason I wanted to put it out is because I loved the design and everything so much of the cover and such. So I just wanted to see it out on paper. It's based in a animation type.
Okay, so anime. For listeners who may not know what that is, can you explain it?
Well, it's like a Japanified type of cartoon where you can tell a story by visuals, where you can have special moments that rectify romance, drama, and all sorts.
All right. And your story's about a teen love triangle.
Well, I did say on the blurt that it was about a love triangle, but then after some months, I realized that it's not even a love triangle. It's just two guys that love the girl.
Okay, tell me the story.
It's about an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old falling into real love instead of a faked one. The main character, which is told by the female perspective, is Aikawa. She's just moved into a new city in Tokyo, unfortunately because her father died there. Her and her mother both don't know the reason why, as if they moved. However, they believe they moved because they want to forget about him, or they have. She then meets Yun. Aikawa has a condition where if she gets to almost a certain point, or if she gets cold, she first got scared and nervous about the new school, worrying, anxiety. They do become friends, but what happened was a sweet moment. She was crouching down because she was so scared and nervous. Oh, what can I do? What should I do? New people, new school.
Right.
He asks if she's okay, and then claiming that she looked pale. And he basically gives her a piggyback ride all the way to her home. So then he meets her mother, who is the same figure as my mother. And then since he went all his way to take her home, which isn't far, I calculated the distance.
Okay.
And she offers him a ride home or a ride to school or something. And then he politely declines. And then he's actually on the running team.
So does he run home?
Yes, he does. And that's actually the love interest. So after all of that, and he returns to school, we then start with the love interest, Yamashiro Shiro. It's in his last year of high school. Since she got sick, he met her on the second day, and she mentions him accidentally because she got bombarded by girls who were having girl talk. Who's your boyfriend? What's your type? So she accidentally blurts her name, and then he actually has a nickname, which is, I think, funny. Oh, it is funny because he's born on Valentine's Day.
So what's his nickname?
Cupid. They decided to fake date or to take a picture to show that they're dating.
Why?
Because no. Once who's about to graduate. He falls for her first 2 months later, and they had their moments.
So both of the guys fall in love with her.
Yes, except the one who doesn't get her is nicer, and that makes it more sad. So Shido and Aikawa had one of the last special moments as an aquarium date, and that was my favorite.
What's so special about this date?
Well, they went to an aquarium in Tokyo, and they had like one of those, I don't know if one of your clients or people ever watch anime, but one of those types of moments.
That you can't describe for me.
No, but I got the image in my head.
Is it in your book?
Well, they end with taking a trip to Chiba and spent a day there.
Where is that?
Chiba is a beach and an island. They were talking about going to the beach, so they invited Yun. Shido was first to ask Aikawa about a one-day trip or 2 days, and then she invited Yun, which made Shido show a bit of a jealousy side. They spent the day and afternoon in the hotel because they wanted to wait till night. Yun quickly confesses to her by writing a post-it note and leaving it beside her door. Jealousy was the little bit of conflict, but there is none because he is just that nice of a guy. So he befriends Aikawa's lover, Shido, and accepts defeat. However, Yun still decides to be Aikawa's friend. It's passionate, it's cute, it's sweet.
So what inspired you? Was it something that happened to you or just something that you made up?
Well, going on my current inspirations and creation reasons, I'm sure it must have happened because I felt something when watching some show or material that made me think of these visions, and then I wrote them down, which I could have used more wording.
So what happens now? Is there another story about these three people?
Oh, there is. There's a sequel to this. Since the last episode 12, ended like a sort of movie thing, which I didn't exactly mean to do, I figured I'd start on another train, and it has the same type of theme. Shido is now graduated, but Aikawa and Shido are still together. He's now waiting for her to enter college with him. That season has new characters going in, but also the background characters. A new character, Haruma, Norita Haruma, who's a girl who actually likes Aikawa. I just wanted to make some lesbian, and I thought it would be fun.
Okay. What does your heart is my enemy mean?
In other words, Anta no kokoro wa watashi no teki desu. I said the Japanese version. I'm sorry. Well, as of the enemies to lovers type of trope that might be overused, it's signaling Shido's feelings towards Aikawa in the beginning. So basically that he doesn't like her, but then shows to like her and loves her. Not make love, but loves.
I'm assuming you're promoting this on social media.
I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I have YouTube, 2 channels.
What are you doing there?
Japanese posts, images to like show my process and such.
Are people paying attention?
Well, I pay attention to the views.
Are you getting some views?
Yeah. Mostly for
Okay.
the Japanese ones. But this account on X used to be an art account, and they're all Japanese, so that's why.
All right. Sounds like you're on your way. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.